Hey, what's up guys? Hive Consultant here. And tonight I'm going to talk about burning the Hive token. Let's start off with just a basic definition of what is burning a token. So any cryptocurrency can have a burning address. And basically what a burning address is you have the inputs for the address to receive the token, but you don't have the outputs to be able to spend the token. So what is burning a token on Hive? On Hive, you have the @null account. That's @NULL. This was the same account that was purchased or that was brought over from Steam, and you could previously burn tokens on Steam, and now you can burn the same tokens on Hive by sending tokens to the @null account. So you can send the tokens in, but you can't spin the tokens out. Effectively, that would remove it from the overall cap. The overall total of the coin on the blockchain. So why would you want to do this? What is the purpose of burning a token? Well, in theory, if you remove a portion of the tokens by burning them, then the tokens that are left over should increase in value as long as there's demand. So if you have a blockchain that has a very large amount of tokens, maybe billions or trillions, and we've seen some of those in the crypto space, and you decide, look, listen, that's way too many tokens, we don't need that many, and we are going to burn some of the tokens to increase the value. There's many examples of this, I won't go into them, but they are out there, and if you start to do some research, you'll find them. If you have a blockchain that's like Steam or Hive, EOS, and there is no limit to the total amount of tokens. Over time, maybe the issuance rate lowers and gets lower and lower over time, but you never truly stop creating tokens. There's a lot of pressure there to remove some of the tokens in order to increase the value of the tokens that are still existing on the blockchain. In Steam, Hive, and EOS's case, you're talking about a blockchain that doesn't have transaction fees. So there's always going to have to be creation of new tokens. If you have a total overall limit and you burn tokens, which we've seen that on blockchains that have capped token limits, is one thing. But you almost feel like you have to do it on something like Hive. So we discussed a little bit why you would want to do it to decrease the total number of tokens and increase the value of the tokens left over. So why would you not want to burn a token? Charles Hoskinson was discussing this recently, and I think he might have been talking about Stellar. But in general, him and many others in the space have made the claim that why would you want to destroy value in order to increase the value? And that kind of got me to thinking about what's the value of destroying a Hive token? What do you really get out of it? Other than reducing the overall supply, what do you actually, what is the value being created? Pretty much you're just betting on the future value of the token being higher due to a reduced supply limit. But the argument against that is you're destroying value to create value. Well, those tokens could have been used for development, to pay developers, to pay for advertising, to incentivize people in the community to pitch in and do things, to be used as rewards of some sort. So you're destroying value, and you have to compare that to the value that you're really getting. Now, that's not to say that it's right or wrong. I see the arguments for burning and against burning. And on something like Hive, I think the pressure to burn is there. But we don't really see a lot of large amounts of burning. I think the chart that I last saw when I was doing a little bit of research was They Call Me Dan had like 700 tokens maybe. There were some other accounts below him, 600, 5, 4, 3. You know, there's only a couple thousand tokens out of the millions of Hive tokens created that have actually been burned. So is the incentive of burning tokens to only reduce the overall supply, is that enough incentive and is that enough value? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. I mean, a lot of this is early days on Hive, so it's to be determined. But it kind of got me to thinking about the history of burning tokens. The first time I ever heard of burning a token was on XRP. There was the counterparty XRP token. And basically what this was is a second layer solution to create tokens on the Bitcoin blockchain. So Mastercoin had an ICO, but Counterparty, they actually did not take any money to do this. What you did was you sent Bitcoin to a burn address so the Bitcoin couldn't be spent, and you got XRP tokens in return. And if you go to the Counterparty website and read about proof of burn, just a quick Google search and it'll pull it right up. One of the things it talked about was the transferring of the value. It was basically essentially saying you're transferring the value of Bitcoin that you're destroying, but you're getting the value of the XRP token on Counterparty. And I kind of thought about that and was like, we see burning a lot today, but what you don't see is a token of value being returned to the user who burns the token. So if you're like Hive and you have the ability to create tokens, why would you not explore the idea of giving people incentive? And then I was thinking, well, what kind of tokens would you have? Now you could go down a long list of ideas of different types of tokens to create different types of incentives, and maybe you'd have multiple. Maybe it can even be where the user chooses it or they randomly receive different ones. I mean, that's a really good use case for tokens in general. Because what you're doing is you're burning the value of Hive today to get the value of whatever the token is, you know, either instantly, immediately, or in the future. And of course, there's a little bit of risk to that. Will these tokens ever be, is the incentive to hold these tokens more than what Hive is worth or could be worth in the future? So I was trying to think of like, what's the best case scenario? If I could have a token that would incentivize me to burn Hive and its potential future value, what would it be? And you know, we'll get to that in a second, but let me double back for a second on what my original thought was. So burning a token and getting only a reduced supply to me was not as much of a good idea as burning the token of Hive and receiving some other value instead. And you know, ICOs came out, and you saw people giving Bitcoin, Ethereum, and other cryptocurrencies, and basically they're raising the money to build the project or fund the project or whatever they're doing, and you got a token back. But the money going in, the Bitcoin, the Ethereum, it's not being destroyed. It's not being burned. It's spendable. And that value is being used to create things in that ecosystem and for those projects, which in turn is increasing the value that the user gets of the token that they got in exchange for their Bitcoin or Ethereum or whatever US dollars. So I just wanted to kind of like, you know, do a little compare and contrast. I mean, there's some similarities. You either can burn it and get nothing except a reduced supply. You can burn it and get some other token of value. And then if you compare that to ICOs, the tokens aren't burned or destroyed at all, but you are trading tokens out. And that kind of got me thinking, okay, so what's the best case scenario for Hive? Or what would be the incentive that I might consider burning for? Because you can create tokens on Hive for almost anything. And I think we're going to enter that era soon where you see that more and more and more. But for now, I just kind of wanted to touch on an idea. And, you know, this is one of those things where there could be some positives and negatives. There could be some very big risks. There could be some development issues where this would not be a feasible idea. And I don't want to call it burned Hive Power, but let's just call it permanent Hive Power. I mean, a lot of times whenever we talk about Hive Power, yeah, the Hive is not liquid, but if we see what we saw in Steam, where something goes bad, or we see what we saw in the past bull and bear markets was on Steam, where Steam goes all the way up, and then you have a large incentive to sell, people will power down. And you talk about how Hive Power shows how committed someone is. Well, in my mind, would it be possible to have permanent Hive Power? The incentives for permanent Hive Power would have to be much greater than what you see out of current Hive Power. If Hive Power is not liquid, but it can be made liquid within the power down of 13 weeks, then the incentives of permanently burning Hive and the value it has today and potential future value has to be greater than Hive itself and greater than Hive Power that can be powered down. But I am curious, what type of effect that would have. You would have to look at creating the incentives for permanent Hive Power being greater than both of those things. And then you have to think about, okay, as far as development goes, what types of changes, how would you implement that system? Is it simply a token? How do you regulate that trade-off? When you send the burned tokens to the @null address and you want to receive permanent Hive Power, there's all different types of ways, even, just thinking about it, to the point where it's a little bit overbearing, thinking, well, how would you even implement that type of system? I mean, Hive Power on its own and the power up, power down process is confusing for users. Would it be something that is not a good idea to introduce? But then I thought about it and thought about the positives. I mean, if you're talking about being committed to Hive, if you're talking about being committed to the idea of this platform, and we think that Hive Power is the ultimate commitment because you're powering up, you're putting your money where your mouth is, you're not just taking and cashing out Hive from the system, but you're actually leaving it on there so you can curate, so you have more bandwidth, you can leave more comments, you can have more replies, you can create more posts, get bigger curation rewards, etc. All the things you get from powering up. If you had the chance to make a bet that is going to be a very powerful, popular blockchain and cryptocurrency token in the future, would you be willing to make that trade-off today for permanent Hive Power? I mean, that's a pretty big commitment. On Steam, when things started to go bad, you could easily power down, you could get out of it. If the bear market hits, you can power down, you can sell out of it. But if you trade Hive Power for, or if you burn Hive to get permanent Hive Power, pretty much if everything goes bad, you're out of luck, you're out of money. Maybe on a fork, maybe if you had something happen again, you could fork over a snapshot that shows regular Hive Power versus permanent Hive Power, and maybe some of it could be saved if you had to switch blockchains. But in general, if it was just going down like what you see with Steam today, and you have powered up Steam, and then the platform is just losing users, it's not doing well, pretty much you can power down and get out of that right now. But if it was permanent, you just basically were at a loss, other than that you could have came to Hive. That's the only benefit of that. So thinking about that, I started to think about, well, what are some of the risks? And of course, the first thing that came to mind was, people were very, very upset when these exchanges powered up Steam to use the voting power to affect the voting of witnesses. I can't imagine whether it was intentional and malicious or whether it was even accidental if you accidentally took a customer's Hive and burned it and created permanent Hive Power. Because even if you were able to give the Hive Power back to the customer, even if it was a tradable token of permanent Hive Power, and that's another thing, do you even make it tradable? Or is it once it's burned and permanent Hive Power goes to an account, you can't even trade it? I mean, that's a design thing you'd have to figure out on the trade-offs of it being tradable. I mean, right now, You can send Hive Power to other users. So I guess feasibly you could exchange it. But yeah, that was one of the ideas I thought about, was like, what are some of the risks of this? And then are the incentives, can you create incentives great enough to make people want to do it? So anyways, I don't want to take too long and kind of blabber around about it, but I just wanted to bring up this idea and see what people thought. From a development standpoint, is it possible? Is it feasible? If so, how would you develop it? I'm sure there's many different ways that you could implement that type of idea. Would you even use a token that's created, or in what way would you try to implement permanent Hive Power? Or what would be some of the greater incentives to make permanent Hive Power worth the risk over regular Hive Power that can be powered down and liquidated? And then in general, would the community like that? If you're going to continually try to push burning tokens, is permanent Hive Power a good incentive to burn a token? And if it's not, what are some other tokens or some other ideas that you can use? Because like I said, if you swing back to Counterparty and you look at this, they transferred the value of the burned Bitcoin into the XRP token. And Counterparty and XRP is not really that big of a deal today. I mean, it still exists, but it's not like it's a powerful user-filled platform where people are just creating a lot of tokens on Bitcoin. I mean, in my mind, it's fizzled out, and I don't know if it'll ever recover. But it's the early days of Bitcoin, 2014, probably 2013, 2014 when that was created. So, back then that was the first burning of a token I've ever heard of. And that may have been the first proof of burn, was on Counterparty XRP. But yeah, just give me your thoughts, give me your replies. Be sure to follow me. It's hive.consultant. Let me know what you think. Let me know what you think on all those questions. Is it a good idea, a bad idea? If not burning for permanent Hive Power, what are some of the other incentives? Or do we even need incentives? Or do we not need to burn Hive at all? Anyways, guys, have a good night. Hope to hear from you soon. See ya.